Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How is everyone out there in internet land
Good to
today?
see you. We got Poetic, we got Bear, we got John Barry.
Yep, we are
Hello.
we are as live gets. Well,
That's true.
all things considering, we're pretty live, I guess.
We're mostly alive.
We're alive, if does that count?
That's true. I mean, that's today at work. That's about all I had to offer was being alive. But it was just one. Sometimes you have those days.
I got to work today and I had one student show up for my first class, and I'm like, you know what? I don't feel it. I'm going home. That was Terry's day. So
I was running a news package and forgot where I was and didn't go back out to the anchor when the news package was done. So that was my day.
See, when you said you forgot where you were, I thought you meant like spatially, like.
No, I forgot what I was doing.
Well, what we are here to do right now is to talk about Star Wars Resistance.
Yes.
And we will issue kind of a general spoiler warning, I guess, before we get started. That we're going to talk about the whole of season one, or at
Hmm.
least the whole of season one is fair game for our conversation. So
Yes.
if there's any of it that you have not seen, then consider yourself warned ahead of time. I know that there's still some international stuffs about it, and some people have an easier time watching it than others, but that's what we're here to talk about today. So
Yep.
you have
This is our
been duly notified.
this is our season one review, as it were.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah. Kind of a retrospective here today. Um, so like we talked, so we've had what, two streamcasts now, or three to talk about Resistance.
I think we had.
We had
I
one
think it's.
before it started,
Yep. And we've done 2 cents. I think.
2 cents. This is like our fourth one then. So
Yeah.
like maybe a good place to start our conversation is like, how have your impressions of the show changed along the way, either from like before the show started through like the middle of the season and now to the end of season one.
My impressions have changed greatly. I think my very first impression of the show was back when it was coming out in just a few months, and we knew nothing about it, in
Right.
which I was mostly worried. Um, uh, to seeing some early for kids than their past series, which just was going to be less likely to interest me,
Right.
than to actually watching it and being really impressed, not necessarily in love with, but really impressed right from the get go. And then now I think I'm hooked into. I think I got hooked by the end of the first season of Resistance faster than Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
I think Clone Wars will still always have a very special place in my heart.
Right.
And I don't want to do any kind of unhealthy. This one's better, and the other one's, I'm not here for that. But
Right.
just generically, I think this had a stronger first season than Rebels did
I think
overall.
I think so too, and I mean personally, I would say the same thing for Clone Wars. Clone Wars was a slow burn for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I don't know. I kind of agree. Like, I don't want to say that I had low expectations, but I don't know that I had many expectations
Yeah.
of what we would get out of Resistance. It's like I wasn't expecting to be disappointed. I wasn't expecting it to be bad. I honestly
Mm-hmm.
just had no idea what to expect. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even as we were finding out about like the Colossus and the different racing teams, for
Mm-hmm.
because we got a lot of that. Now I will say I was expecting it to be like a lot of racing themes.
Yes.
Like, I was thinking this was going to be swoop racers, but on the water and in the air kind of deal. And it definitely wasn't that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was incredibly pleased with what we got. I feel like the characters started out on a positive note with me and just grew on me over time. I feel like I really kind of understood like who they were as people, and what their
Mm-hmm.
motivations were and things like that. And then of course the way it ties into the sequel trilogy. You can't really overlook that either. But
Right.
John Barry says for him the first half of the season was rough with the expectations of the first episode, but the second half was on par with Rebels. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think it. I don't want to say it started off slow, but I think it ended on a bigger note than it started off on.
Yes.
For me as well.
And I think it's easier. Also, hello everything Star Wars, and thank you. We're gonna talk about hitting 600 on Friday, actually.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's easier to compare the show to Rebels than Clone Wars, because Clone Wars, even though you can argue like Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka were the main characters, that show was really more of an anthology show.
Right.
So I think that one's always going to be a harder show to compare anything to anyway, where Rebels was very much about the Ghost Crew, and this is very much about Team Fireball
Right.
and their adventure. So it's easier to compare the two, and the themes of rebellion make them more comparable anyway.
Right.
But like what you were saying with expectations, so many people were talking about it being a kid show. I mentioned that ahead of time already. And I think the other thing for me was this is going to be a show with no Force-sensitive characters, a show mostly about racing and spaceships. And so
all those ships.
The ships. So even if it had been the most darkest, grittiest Christopher Nolan made it show, I was already going to figure the show wasn't really for me anyway because of the subject material. And this show completely won me over with really the connections to the sequel trilogy. We have, for all the content that's coming out, we've had such a drought for sequel trilogy content, really, at least comparatively.
Right.
And so to see it, I mean, that's why I lost my mind so much during that trailer when we saw Hux's speech, is just to know how soon this was going to hit.
Right.
And how directly it was going to be connected to The Force Awakens was great.
Yeah, that fake fangirl reaction that you had to that trailer. I mean, and I think even through the end, like I was in kind of suspense as to how it was going to tie into stuff. Like even when we saw Hux's speech in the trailer, and we've seen Phasma and Poe, and we've heard about Kylo Ren, and we kind of got some information about Starkiller Base even before we saw it. Like so we know it's tying in, but like right through the end, I was kind of in suspense about what that was going to mean and what we were going to see and what we weren't going to see, and how is this going to set us up for bringing these characters up to date with The Last Jedi and things like that. And I think they did a really good job of keeping us in suspense, but also like giving us stuff at the end as well.
Yeah, for sure. And also, welcome, Young But Retro. Good to see you here. Thank you for dropping by. But yeah, I think that suspense on where the show could go is big for me too, because it's hard to say exactly where we are in The Force Awakens now, but there's not a lot of time, presumably, between the destruction of Hosnian and the end of the film, because Starkiller Base is then trying to rev back up so it can shoot the car.
Right.
Which is where the Colossus thought it was going to go and isn't going now, presumably. And there's not a lot of time between the end of The Force Awakens and the beginning of The Last Jedi.
Right.
So I wonder if... I mean, the first half of the season is going to run before we get to Episode 9. So in that first half of the season, is that entire first half of the season going to coincide with The Last Jedi? Are we going to get past The Last Jedi and actually have content between 8 and 9? Or are we going to... Maybe we won't even know, because if they go way, way out into space to Purrgil country, they might not even know how much time has passed.
Right. I don't know. I guess the way I thought it might happen, and I don't know, I don't really have anything to base this speculation on, but I was still watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the time that Captain America Civil War came out.
Yes.
And that was one of those things where they were like, hey, don't watch the rest of this until you've seen Civil War.
I remember that.
And so I kind of, I mean, they kind of did the same thing with Thor Dark World, but nobody cared about Thor Dark World. So...
Specifically, the plot wasn't relevant. to Thor: The Dark World.
Well, there's also
yes.
that, but like Civil War changed the Shield show because of what happened in Civil War, and so I kind of wonder if that's what they're gonna do with this. Is that
Mm-hmm.
first half of the season will like take it up consecutively with The Last Jedi,
Right.
and then it'll be like, no, go watch this before you come back. Um,
It could be, and I mean the logical thing is, of course, in The Last Jedi, Leia puts out the call to other members of the Resistance, and no
mhm.
one answers. Now, did they bother to check if the antenna was just broken? I don't know.
They should
No,
have
I think they.
submerged Crate so that they could get up to the Aces Tower.
No, it did say the message had been received in the movie, um, but no one comes. So presumably, the Colossus could be a part of the rebuilding of the rebellion.
Right.
Now, I don't think that Kaz and company would. Well, I don't think Kaz would reject Leia's call. Kaz might not get to make that decision. It's,
Right.
who's in charge now? We have Doza, and it's his tower, but you have the pirates there, which is the most interesting move to me.
Sure.
Is that the pirates are on the tower, and how does that go? Are the people still going to want Doza in charge because he was working with the First Order,
Right.
Even though it was more forced than anything else? But depending on who's in charge on the Colossus, they might reject Leia's call. I think it's important to know that,
Right.
regardless, what Kaz would do is probably irrelevant.
I mean, for the whole of this season, we've only had 2 characters that we know on the Colossus openly support the Resistance. Other people might be sympathetic, but only Kaz and Yeager have been part of the Resistance, and I don't know that we can just assume that any of the other characters will all of a sudden want to change their minds either. So it may be more than him not getting to decide, but people being completely disinterested. Young but Retro says, I don't know why, but I think we might see Ezra next season and explain what happened to him in Thrawn. The ship could end up in the unknown regions. If the Colossus, I guess, could end up in the unknown regions. That's a thing I've not really considered.
I've seen that. A couple of people that commented on my review brought this up because basically Thrawn and Ezra launched off into who knows where. They didn't really know where they were going. But basically the idea, I guess it's kind of like the improbability drive from Hitchhikers. It's like 2 people both put in random coordinates, therefore they put in the same random coordinates, which if this was any other series, I would think is absurd. In Star Wars, it could happen. I think it would be interesting. I think where that's a little bit deceiving is a lot of people still treat this show like Dave Filoni is like super in charge of it, and therefore we're going to see Ezra. I think as long as Filoni is actively involved in Lucasfilm, we won't see a Filoni character outside of a Filoni program.
Right.
Filoni is the executive producer on the show, but he's not the supervising director.
Right.
And he's busy with Clone Wars right now. So I don't know. I like it as a theory, and I think it's a fun theory, and I think if it happened, I would be totally for it, and it would be awesome. But I think that assuming it because Filoni's involved with the show is not likely.
Right. I mean, and I think the biggest problem I would have with that is not so much the Dave Filoni issue, but the 30 years difference issue. I feel like that would be a lot of explanation that you would be putting on this show to explain a thing from another show. Like I'm assuming, I don't, all the people I know that watch Resistance are like super Star Wars fans that are, chatting theories on Twitter. But I'm imagining that there's a segment of the people that watch Resistance that never watched Rebels. I mean, and I guess there was an element of that when Rebels brought back Ahsoka, but that feels different to me because those 2 things were closer in time, and
Much
closer.
Closer.
And to have, I mean, like, I guess the Colossus could find, like, evidence of what happened to Thrawn and Ezra. But, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly an interesting theory, but I don't...
Yes. I wouldn't discount it as a theory at all, but I wouldn't put it as proved either. I think it's one of those fun things to think about.
I mean, I think it's very likely that the Colossus could end up in an unexplored region of the galaxy
Mm-hmm.
and have adventures because of that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or let that tie in or be Easter eggs to other things. But I don't know.
I think what I kind of wonder too is wherever they end up, is wherever they end up going to be the major plot point for the season, or is it just going to be the thing for the like 5 minutes of the first episode?
Right.
Right? Do they end up somewhere where they're stuck, or is it like, oh, we're here, we'll just put in the full coordinates now and go to Dakar? You know what I mean? And
Right. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that to spend too much time focused on where are they going to end up, it could end up being relevant, or it could end up being 2 minutes, and setting yourself up with that kind of expectation might not be good. What John Barry's saying, I think that's really likely that they'll end up at Batu.
Batu. Yeah.
For many reasons. One, everything is connecting to Batu. I think we'll see Batu in episode 9, personally.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not as a large role, but in some capacity, or at least we'll hear a reference to it.
Right.
But I also think that we've seen Yeager's family is from Batu, or at least he was the Batu at some point with his family.
Right.
There's his family photo you see in Fuel for the Fire. The background is the same as all the Galaxy's Edge pictures. So
Right.
I think that's going to become really likely.
I mean, the thing, like I said, that complicates all of this for me is that the Colossus, even if it is a ship, which we found out,
Mm-hmm.
like it's not like everyone there is the crew. Like there are people that are just on there because they live and have businesses and work there.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like I don't know. Like I can, feel like what are the two shopkeepers?
Flix and Orca.
Flix and Orca, yeah.
Yep.
Like they were talking about going to his mother's house. Like they were
Right.
like they got other things to do with their lives than like I don't think we can just. I mean, maybe this is making things more complex than a kids show, will think about. But like the whole station is full of people that are just there to live their lives. Like they're not part of any movement. They're not part of the First Order. They're not part of the Resistance. They didn't care about the Republic,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. And I think it's strange of us to expect them to fall into some kind of ideology just because plot,
Right. No, I completely agree. And I don't think it is too complex for a kid show when that same kid show showed the destruction of Hosnian Prime
Sure.
and currently has a character that's rejected her friends to go join a fascist organization.
Yeah.
So this show has not shied away from the complex thus far.
Oh yeah, you're definitely right about that. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Batu or something like that. I just think it's I think it's weird from my point of view to just assume, because the easy thing would say, well, the Colossus is a space station that can move. It can just be a mobile rebel base or a mobile resistance base. But I don't know if that makes sense given the complement of the station or the ship.
I would actually love to see that explored, where you have people who want to help and then you have people who just want to live their lives. I think that would be something really interesting for them to play out. And the reluctant hero is not uncommon to Star Wars, right up there with Han Solo.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that could be something that's really interesting, because you put yourself in a position where the Resistance, Leia's Resistance, has pretty much nothing right now.
Right.
And so you'd see somebody like Doza or Yeager or Kaz who would be highly sympathetic to wanting to lend a hand, but then there's all these other people. And you have, people like Hype, Stephen Stanton's character, I think the name's Griff, but I can't remember, the ex-Imperial fighter. You have people who are in the Aces who were getting away from choosing a side regardless of what that side is. So it's not even they just want to live their lives. It's like we don't know how Hype was affected, but the fact that he didn't want to be involved with the First Order but also isn't fighting against the First Order tells me that he's already chosen not to fight.
Right.
And then you still have the pirates. And what are the pirates going to do?
They're going to rob everyone. As soon as we come back, the pirates are just robbing everyone. End of show.
Well, because that's when the pirates came back in the finale, I thought Synara had pulled some kind of mutiny or something. But then you see Kragan in one of the shots.
Right.
I was like, well, why is Kragan tolerating this and also letting Sonara lead? Like, there's something going on with those pirates that I really want to know.
I mean, and it could easily be that the destruction of Hosnian and the First Order occupation of the Colossus is enough to galvanize all of the people of the Colossus.
Yeah.
And it could be. I just don't know that we can assume that.
Right.
But while we're still talking about the Colossus and its location, what are your thoughts on the theory that Leia intentionally gave them the coordinates to not Dakar, sending them on to whatever a secondary destination would be on purpose? I know that's been the theory that I've seen going around. That when Leia gave them the coordinates to the next base, that it wasn't Dakar, that she intentionally sent them to wherever they might have been planning to relocate if they needed to.
I haven't actually heard this one. So then when Kaz said we're going to Dakar, here are the coordinates, he thought they were the coordinates for Dakar,
right?
But they actually weren't.
Right.
That's an interesting theory. That would solve the issue of Leia saying, here's the coordinates to our next base, and then Kaz saying Dakar, which I don't think is that big of an issue, but I know it bothered some people. I like it because it's just one more level of subterfuge to kind of hide it. I think that kind of goes back to the debate of, was the plan always to go to Crate, or did Crate become the plan when they had to evacuate?
Right.
Like, at what point did Crate become the plan?
I mean, I think Crate became the plan along the way.
Yeah.
At least, especially after they realized that they were being tracked through hyperspace.
Yeah.
But I don't know. John Barry says the pirates were betrayed by the First Order, so revenge could be a motivating factor for them. I mean, it could very well be, but I don't know that necessarily means they would want revenge by helping the Resistance either.
Or would they want revenge on specific First Order members and not really care about the First Order? Like, is there beef with Pyre and Phasma? Not, and maybe they do. But I would agree with that. I think if the pirates want revenge, they would work with the Colossus as long as it was prudent. But I just don't see Kragan and Doza having tea together.
No. I mean, or now that they're on the Colossus, they could just take what they were trying to get in the first place, because the First Order isn't there to stop them anymore.
Right.
But no, I think that's an interesting idea too. You mentioned this earlier, and I know we both have thoughts. And if you've not watched, you did a series of reviews for these episodes too. So if you're out there and you've not seen those reviews, a lot of these thoughts are already in there, and I encourage you to check those out. But I want to talk for a few minutes about Tam, because I have strong thoughts about Tam's arc.
Yes.
And I want to sort of see where we might think she ends up in season 2. And I guess my one big thought about Tam's arc could be, why didn't you tell her?
Right. That's the thing. Like, I get that she's sympathetic to the First Order, but it was really clear that she was sympathetic to the First Order not for ideological reasons.
Like, there were so many people on social media talking about how Tierney was manipulating her. And I'm not saying that she wasn't, but she was manipulating her with truth that her friends intentionally, not just neglected to tell her, intentionally kept from her. Yep. So, like, that you take away that tool if you just tell her what's going on. Like, even if you know, like they went to the planet where the children of Dahar were from. Like, and she was like, I don't know why you're, like, Kaz could have come back and said, no, look, they destroyed this planet. Like, this is unjustifiable.
Yeah.
Like, I think Tam, even if she was sympathetic, is smart enough to say, hey, no, this is a big deal. Or to say, hey, we watched them destroy planets in real time. Like maybe, I don't know.
I completely blame Kaz and Yeager throughout the entirety of the show, except for the finale. I think the scene where she's about to go to the First Order and it's like the big standoff. I think if they had started saying things like the First Order destroyed Hosnian Prime, I think at that point Tam would have been like, "Oh, you're being ridiculous now."
Right.
And the First Order would have played along. So I don't think telling her. I think at that point it was too late, no
Yeah.
matter what they said, and I don't really blame them for not saying more then. But any point in time up until that point, they had numerous chances, and even where Tam had sympathies to the First Order, the new Trooper episode, she's kidnapping a stormtrooper and helping clonk him on the head and like doing all this stuff to get the kids from Tahar away from the First Order.
Right.
So even though she has those loyalties, she's already picking her friends over those loyalties. And I get being nervous and not wanting to say I'm a resistance spy, but you don't even have to say that much right away. You can say, this is what the First Order does, this is what the First Order does, this is what they do. You can say literally anything.
Right.
And instead they just totally kept her in the dark.
I mean, I just feel like, without even saying so, you just get the sense that characters like Flix and Orca even understood more of what was going on than Tam does, and a lot of that is because her friends keep her out. Like she knows something is going on. Like it's obvious to her the whole time that something's going on. You have this person with no mechanical skills that gets hired as a mechanic, who mysteriously takes this ship out that she has been promised, and gets to fly it whenever he needs to, when she doesn't get to have it at all. Like they're, I don't know. And you're right. I don't know that the answer would have been just come out and say, hey, I work for the Resistance. But I mean, honestly, he didn't work for the Resistance for that long. He could have said, I'm a disaffected Republic pilot. I left the Republic military because I'm concerned about the First Order, and here I am. You know, like that's still a whole lot more honest than coming up with some kind of completely false backstory.
That's true.
I don't know. And but at the same time, it leaves it in a difficult place for me to try to figure out what Tam's arc is going to be into season 2, because I don't know that she's just going to automatically be gung-ho First Order now, but she may not also have a choice at this point.
Right. My concern for Tam is that the new Trooper episode, where we heard more about brainwashing, we already knew that Finn went through he was supposed to go through some kind of reconditioning in The Force Awakens, and he left before that happened. I'm kind of wondering if that's not going to be a Chekhov's gun kind of syndrome.
Yeah.
And I could see a Tam learning the truth, learning about Hosnian Prime, learning about all of this stuff, like just before they put her in the brainwashing tube. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that could be really interesting and really tragic, that she finally learns the truth, but then she's even more sealed. And then they have to try to rescue Tam from her own mind, basically.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, and there are connections there to like the Order 66 chips from the Clone Troopers too. John says, I want Tam's arc to be that she wants to get out but is too scared to do so. I mean, that could very well be it. It's just, I don't know. I guess in my mind, at least, I connect Tam so much to like what I imagine young Ray Sloan is like.
Right.
Like sympathetic to the idea of peace and order and justice, even harsh justice. But I don't know. I just feel like so much of that could have been avoided with some conversations with the people she was closest to.
Yeah. And even if she wouldn't have believed Kaz, she would have listened to Yeager.
Sure. Yeah.
And I kind of wonder from Yeager's perspective, not to give him too much leash on this, because I still think he completely bungled it, but he's probably been through this. He probably had friends when he was in the rebellion who were Imperial sympathizers that he talked to, and it didn't go well.
Right.
And maybe that's why he's gun shy and why he didn't want to talk to Tam.
Right.
And that I could understand, but it would also be very different when it's your peer versus somebody who looks up to you like family.
I mean, even if it was somebody like Doza who could say, I was in the Empire and the First Order is different, or I was in the Empire and here's why I was wrong. You know, like if that's what she's sympathetic to, even having somebody that at least at one point was also sympathetic to those things and involved
Yeah.
in those things. Um, because like her whole deal is from her grandfather saying, the First Order, or the Empire kept the peace. Like
Yeah.
that's the main thing she's going on, is the
Hmm.
Empire kept the peace. And I just feel like any other personal connection to something different would have been transformational for her, and she's denied that because they keep her in the dark.
Well, and she's presumably a good pilot, right? Like that's what she wants to be.
Yeah.
Um, so if she could have gotten a ship too and gone with Kaz and Poe at some point to see, it's not confirmed as Tahar, but the planet that's probably Tahar at the testing site. That could have changed a lot of things for her too.
Yeah. John says, putting on a tinfoil hat, but what if Tam was told by Yeager and she's play acting to get deeper inside information? No evidence, but that'd be awesome. Yeah, I mean, that would definitely be cool. To have Tam be a more effective spy than Kaz. Which she would totally be, by the way.
She really would be.
Like,
she's in many ways the person that would have helped the Resistance so much more.
I mean, so I don't know what to expect if we'll just see her. And I guess a lot of it depends on what the jump from season 1 to season 2 is like.
Yeah.
But I expect her to be in some kind of at least First Order training. Something. I don't know what that looks like.
On the topic of spies, I've still seen this. We had a couple of comments about this. I've seen this conversation elsewhere. Do you think that there is still a First Order spy on the Colossus that we have yet to discover, or do you think that plot line has been resolved?
I mean, I don't even know that it was a plot line at all, to be honest, at this point.
Right.
I think it was something that was kind of hinted at because Kaz was sent there to investigate First Order activities, and that suggested that there was First Order activities ongoing. But we learned what that was. It was Pyre and Phasma trying to blackmail their way into getting control of the station. And so, like, I don't feel like, I mean, there may still be stormtroopers there that didn't get flushed out that have to be rounded up.
Right.
But for the most part, I don't think there are any like First Order operatives that will be working undercover anymore.
Yeah, because I feel like when the show was launched, I'm pretty much about to say exactly what John has posted there. Would not rule out a First Order spy, but there's not evidence to say that there is any.
Right.
Because when the show started, and I only remember this because I've recently seen this screenshotted in various places, is the line Poe says to Kaz is, there's some, I don't remember it exactly, but Poe specifically says that find out if there is someone working with the First Order. And I feel like, just kind of remembering back to what the early marketing for the show was, it felt like there's somebody working with the First Order and we got to figure out who it was. And if you watch a lot of my early reviews, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who that is. But I feel like once we knew that Doza was really getting blackmailed, all of the marketing around the show shifted and stopped talking about it. Nobody else in the show really started talking about it. I think we kind of assumed that it was going to be a spy versus spy show. And what that ended up being was a Resistance spy versus a pirate spy, not a Resistance spy versus a First Order spy.
Right, yeah.
And that plotline was really interesting. But yeah, I would not rule it out. I wouldn't be surprised next season at all if it turns out there was somebody on the station who is working for the First Order. But I don't think at this point what was mentioned in the pilot is still an ongoing thread.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I just think it's interesting that there's still a debate. Like, I've seen several people still wondering it, and I feel like it's people who are either convinced we're still looking for the spy, or the people who are like, we've known who the spy was for 2/3 of the season.
I mean, and part of that too, just from like the fact that it's a television show. Like, I feel like if that was still a thing we were supposed to be wondering about, they would have done something to tease it. Like we would have
Right.
seen, somebody like in silhouette change the coordinates to avoid going to Dakar, or we would have seen
Right. Or
like
stole the coordinates to Dakar.
sure, like some kind of evidence. Like I just feel
Hmm.
like that's a very TV show thing to do is like tease that at the end of the season to say no, this is still a thing, and we
Hmm.
didn't get that at all.
Right.
Um, I mean, and honestly, at this point, the First Order may not even need the Colossus, so like that
Right.
that might be kind of beyond their intentions now because they've destroyed most of the New Republic military at this point.
Right. Yeah, because in the show, the eventual reason the show gave for needing the Colossus was fuel on the Colossus, but also I think access to just the planet in general. They can
Hmm.
obviously still have access to Castellon without the Colossus.
Right.
Um, and I still think a lot of it was that that planet happened to be really close to all these First Order testing sites.
Right.
And you probably just don't want people floating around. And now that Starkiller Base is not only known but destroyed,
Right.
doesn't even really matter.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I just don't know. I mean, if I'm not saying that there's not, like you said, I wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
necessarily surprised if there was. I just don't know that we have reason to suspect that there is either.
Yeah.
Um, One other thing I wanted to mention while we're talking about characters and things like that is how impressed I've been from start to finish with Niku. Um,
Yes.
Niku is easily one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Even and that took no time to happen at all. But like Niku saves the day. Like Niku totally like saves everyone on the station. Like
Yep.
he is the
Gets them
hero of the
lost,
Colossus.
but he saves them all.
I mean, he got them
Skynobi!
lost, but it may also not be his fault that they got lost either.
Right.
I don't know. I just I don't know. I think it's worth saying, but
Um,
I feel like one character though that got really short shrifted
mhm.
is Bucket. I feel
Yes.
very very little connection to Bucket if I'm being
I
honest.
completely agree.
I feel
Well, I
like
mean,
BB-8 overshined him and now
yes.
CB overshines him.
Yes.
I don't know.
Now, I was moved when I thought he was dead and then he wasn't
Yeah.
dead.
But that was mostly
But,
because of Yeager's connection to him, not because of
right.
my connection to him.
Yeah. Oh, John, yeah, I'm right there with you. I loved how Niku responded to Kaz. Like, he thought Kaz was kidding.
This is not a time for a joke.
Any other time, it was so wonderful. I loved it so much.
Yeah, I
And
love that because that's the one time he didn't take what Kaz said as like
Yep.
literal truth. He
And,
still thinks he's the best pilot in the galaxy, but he couldn't believe that he's a resistance
the
spy.
resistance spy. And I personally think, okay, I've watched several reviews, and I know that there's a few people who think sometimes Niku's humor was a little bit too much. I would say that I'm biased because I love the character so much, so I would say there were times where it was probably too much, but I didn't care because I like his humor too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If this was like a show that was marketed for not children,
Right.
it might be much. But like in the setting that it was in, I thought he was wonderful. Definitely my favorite character from the series so far. But I always thought that they handled it well. I mean, sometimes he just wasn't really in the episode. But even then, he always had his moment. Like one of my favorites is, I don't remember if it's in Descent or how far back it was, but it's like Kaz is like, "Oh, we're planning a party." And he's like, "Is there gonna be food?" He's like, "Sure." And then he does like that food dance.
Yeah.
It was so good.
But I could see Niku like full on embracing the resistance given the chance.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I loved the way he would talk about the First Order. How he would be like so happy and positive, but he's like, we're a lot safer now, except for the whole "we can't leave our house" thing. I can't remember his exact line, but he had
Right.
a really great way of describing it. He still sounded so positive, but you could tell he didn't like it.
Skynobi says if Hux tracked the resistance through hyperspace, maybe Pyre will do the same. with the Colossus. That's something I've not thought about.
It's a good point. How experimental is hyperspace tracking? Like, does everyone have it, or
Yeah.
Because when we watched The Last Jedi, the Snoke face shows up to talk to Hux, and he's like dragging Hux around on the floor, and then Hux is like, "We have him tied on the end of the string." And when I saw it the first time, I thought Hux was bluffing,
Yeah.
and then cut to Kylo coming in on the end of Hux and Snoke's discussion, and he's like, "Tied on the end of a string, indeed." And you don't get to hear what the plan is. But if Snoke didn't even know they were doing it, I can't imagine every ship has it.
Right. Well, and I don't imagine that the Colossus would necessarily be a high-profile target to be tracked through hyperspace either. I think the First Order might be largely content to just let them go for now.
Well, unless it's a point of pride thing. I could see Pyre and company really wanting to take them down because they're the ones that got away.
Right.
They did kill the Red Baron, which was a good moment, by the way. I really enjoyed that.
R.I.P. Baron Von Trapp.
Baron Von Trapp, yep. What's funny is my inability to remember names went on another step where I finally learned the name Von Reg, his character in Resistance. But then there's the Jude Law's character in Captain Marvel. I can never remember his name now because I just want to call him Von Reg. So Baron Von Trapp is in Star Wars Resistance, and Von Reg is in Captain Marvel, and I don't know who Jude Law is basically what I'm saying.
That's funny. Yeah, I have the hardest time with names of characters. Like, I was reading Rogue Planet, and I was messaging you, like, is this a person? Like, this name sounds vaguely familiar. Is this a thing that I'm supposed to know? And we had to look it up. And now I don't have to remember the Red Baron's name because he's dead. So
it's true. Now he's the dead Baron.
Yeah. There you go. Even Port Haven. We never pass up a good attempt at a bad pun.
Or a bad attempt at a good pun.
There. Either way, we're down for both. Anything else you want to talk about with season 1?
Oh, well, let's talk a bit about the hunt for Starkiller Base in general. Yeah, because I really liked how all these different things kind of led to it, and it kind of took me back to before Rogue One came out. Reading Tarkin, reading Catalyst.
Right.
And even then, even though we knew, obviously we'd seen A New Hope, but just kind of that journey of the Death Star was so interesting, and it was cool kind of seeing that paralleled, and like following the minerals that were being used, like the Doomium, or whatever that was called, that the Death Star was built out of.
Right.
And that kind of thing, that was really fun for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. This almost is like a Journey to the Force Awakens kind of thing, just after the fact, and it was good. I mean, parts of it changed my understanding of how Starkiller Base worked, but I think it was still like, I like having that kind of stuff fleshed out, and I think we've talked about this. I think it's unlikely that we get a whole lot more of that until after Episode 9 comes out.
Right.
But I thought it was really good to kind of see. I mean, especially because Poe was there. So that kind of gave us, some more context for why, Poe would be that much more worried to find Luke Skywalker in The Force Awakens and things like that too.
Right. Sorry, I'm getting distracted I'm having issues seeing chat on my end.
Yeah, I think it's like disconnected or something. Maybe a YouTube problem.
Yeah, I'm not able to access our live page, so hopefully you all are still out there.
OBS says we're still live. I don't know.
Well, we'll find out, I suppose. So anyway, if you're out there, we're not ignoring you. Sorry, we just can't see you. I would say I feel like there's so much that, and yet at the same time I don't want to. Well, what about the Tahar kids? Do you think the girl at least will be force sensitive?
I mean, I think we have enough there that I wouldn't be surprised if she was. I mean, I hate hedging on like literally everything, um, because I feel like we have enough evidence that I wouldn't be surprised if she was, but not
Yeah.
enough evidence to necessarily assume that she is. And that makes me the killjoy of every Star Wars theory ever. Um,
Right.
but I mean, I can also say I was right about Rey not being Luke's daughter too, for whatever that matters. But no, I don't think that would be a bad turn.
Right.
And I think it would fit, especially in kind of like a broom boy kind of way into like the larger mythos of the Force and Star Wars. I'm still interested if there was a reason why Tahar was targeted. Was
Right.
it just a random, we have to test this thing out somewhere? Or was it, I mean, because like the Death Star was tested on Jeddah, but it wasn't
Hmm.
like Jeddah was random. Like there was a reason they were test firing it on Jeddah. So was it just that Tahar, or and I don't, was it ever like confirmed that planet
No,
was Tahar, or is it just
I don't
strongly implied?
I don't think so. It's just that the oh, looks like we're back. Sorry about that, guys. Um, but it looks like it was mostly the symbol on the little piece of wood the kids had
Right.
is the
Yeah.
same symbol on the temple.
Right.
So if it's not Tahar, then it's the same religion or something.
Right. But I would still be really interested to know, like I said, was that intentional or was it just we have to test this somewhere? Um,
Right.
because it was important enough for Kylo to have gone there.
Right.
Um,
And wipe out
and
the village.
and I can't see the First Order, like if they're just going to test fire it on a planet, like it seems in line with the First Order's nature to me to just test fire it and
Right.
not care too much about evacuating and destroying villages ahead of time. If you're just going to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I see Jake Rivers there in chat. Yeah, exactly.
No,
Um, well, I remember there's one thing that the girl says at some point how she can like I think it's in the sea monster episode, she can like tell something's coming, and that's really when that theory kind of grew. So is it just like she's got a knee that can tell the weather
right,
or not? I could see her being kind of like a Chirrut type character,
sure,
like in tune with the force, but maybe not like actively using it,
right,
if that makes sense. Um, it would make her the first force sensitive character on the show if she was force sensitive.
right,
So it's um, would she then like join Ray, and if that happened, she'd presumably leave the show. Like I almost don't think they would make her force sensitive because if she did, she's not going to be a reoccurring character because she's going to be off with Ray. And while I think it's really possible Ray could be on the show at some point for
yeah,
a brief moment, I don't think it's likely she's going to be a regular. Um, but I could see her be. I could see the girl. Kel is the boy's name. I don't remember the girl's name right off the top of my head.
mm-hmm,
Um, but let's see what we got. Jake says Kylo and Knights are probably hunting down to force kids to recruit them or kill them. I thought that too. That was my first thought when they took the village. But then when the planet was where the testing site was, I wasn't sure. And I wouldn't rule that out. Or maybe that's what you were talking about, Django. Maybe the reason why the First Order wiped out the village is because they found out there were force sensitive people in the village.
right,
And that's what made them different. But to me, it feels like the show is implying the village was wiped out because of its. Thank you, Skynobi. Couldn't remember her name. Um, but yes, sorry, lost my train of thought. But yeah, I think it's possible. But I think the show at least was heavily implying they were attacking because of something to do with Starkiller Base. But that doesn't mean that that's correct.
I mean, and I assumed when it first happened that it was happening because um, for like resources, the same as we saw in all of those books leading up to the Death
Right.
Star. Like they were
Yeah.
mining that planet to build Starkiller Base, and that
Mm-hmm.
could also be the truth, but we don't really see that the same way as like mining the kyber crystals on Jeddah.
Speaking of that, have you seen much of the theory going around that Starkiller Base is the planet of Ilum?
Yeah, I
Um,
don't like it, but I've seen
I don't
that.
like it either. That's how I respond every time. And like people, I'm friends with the Star Wars reference community. For any of you out there who are familiar with them, uh, and like that whole community is on Team's Star Killer Base is Ilum. I guess there's all these different references where they like describe the. I can't remember them off the top of my head because I just mentally block them every time I see them. But it just gets increasingly more likely that Star Killer Base is Ilum, and it makes me mad because I don't want it to be Ilum. I want Ilum to be fine.
Yeah.
I also got into a debate with them recently. Apparently, Starkiller Base is mobile, which I didn't know until recently. I thought it was not mobile,
I mean, I
but
thought it was intentionally not mobile, but
yeah, apparently it does move, which was news to me. But apparently, I'm slow on the uptake on that one.
well, before we wrap up, are there any wild, like crazy off the top Leia's clone style theories that you want to throw out for season 2?
Ooh,
Characters we
well,
might see or places we might go?
well, I don't think it is a crazy off the wall theory, but my theory is still Kaz's dad is not dead and Kaz's dad is in the First Order. And I will be on that team until you show me the vaporized atoms of Kaz's dad's body. And you won't be able to convince me otherwise, especially because I just found out that I guess the actor who voiced Kaz's dad in the pilot wasn't a random person, like just filling in. It was an actor by the name of Zima, and he is a TV actor you have definitely seen in something. I know him best as my favorite villain from the show 24. And he's very well known as being like a villain in things. And so now I feel even more solidified in my theory. Because like, why would you get like, even if you don't know his name, you know his face,
Like
and
a
like, why would
character
you
actor
get?
that does villains.
Yeah, like why would you get the character actor that does villains to voice a kid's dad for 3 lines of dialogue and
Yeah.
have no intention? And I still hold this because we didn't see what Kaz's dad looked like. Like I get the reason we had to scramble the signal or whatever, but that felt so plotty. Like I feel like everything about that scene screams Kaz's dad is a villain.
What if Rey is Kaz's dad? Or Kaz's dad is Rey's mom?
I like both of those theories, and I'm with John there. Kaz, I really want Kaz's father to be with the First Order as well. Imagine the tension that could develop, especially with Tam going with the First Order. She could meet Kaz's dad.
Yeah. And Jake, really quick, says, who you think is most wanted by the First Order, Rey, Poe, or Finn? He thinks Poe because he killed Star Killer Base, the Dreadnought, followed by Rey and then Finn. I mean, it depends on who you're talking about. I think Kylo could care less about Poe and Finn.
Absolutely.
I think he is singularly focused on one person in the entire galaxy, and her name is Rey.
Yep, 100%. And he is now the First Order.
I mean, but I also don't think Kylo cares about the First Order. But that's
I don't think he does either.
That's just me.
I don't think he does either at all. I think if you talk about Hux probably wants Poe dead, but that's also because I'm a Poe Hux shipper,
Right.
and I will be until I see otherwise.
I mean, and I still don't believe that Phasma's dead. So like,
Not at all.
Phasma has her vendetta against Finn, so it kind of everybody has their own supervillain. They're their arch nemesis.
Yep. Now, Shriv and Zay on the show, they are from Battlefront 2, right? That is a giant gap in my knowledge. But I've been seeing them go around. I think, are they I think they're characters from Battlefront 2 that are supposed to be looking for allies, but they are a knowledge gap of mine.
I mean, I would still love to see a young Jason Syndulla. I guess
Yes.
it wouldn't be young; it'd be 30 years old Jason Syndulla at this point.
I just really hope that Jason isn't a Knight of Ren.
Yeah, I'm not sold on that either.
I mean, I feel that Jason is a Knight of Ren in the same way I feel that Starkiller Base is Ilum. It would be great story that I don't want.
I would also love for Jackson to be in season 2 of
I'd love for Jackson to be a Knight of Ren. How great would that be? Kylo has betrayed us. Jackson Ren is now leader of the Knights of Ren.
But
carrots are required.
Yeah. Unless you have any specific questions, though, I think that's mostly going to do it for us today, guys. So before we round everything off, I want to remind you to follow us on all the places where you can follow people. On Facebook and Twitter, where we're active, on Instagram, where we're being more active. And you can always find us on our Discord, where we have ongoing conversations about this and the books we're reading and our speculations for Season 2 and The Mandalorian and Episode 9 and all of those things. Discord is one of our best ways to have those conversations with us.
100%. We're floating around there all the time. So I always appreciate talking to you guys in the comments, but I feel like, especially for some of you guys who really like to chat with us, Discord is probably the better way to get all of your thoughts out.
And we can also say, I feel pretty safe to say now that we have hit the 600 subscriber mark on YouTube, and we have some exciting stuff that we will be telling you about as kind of a celebration of that in our Friday on Friday.
Yes, it's gonna be. It's gonna look a little different around here. That's what I'll say.
There you go. But if you haven't already, check out the review from the season finale of Resistance that came out on Sundays on our channel. You had another book club video almost done with Aftermath, Life Debt.
We're going to finish Life Debt on Monday.
And then we'll be moving on into Empire's End, which is one of my favorite new canon novels. But like, subscribe, follow on all the things so that you're staying up to date with what we're doing at Port Haven. But I think that's going to do it for us today.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you most likely next week. But if anything changes, again, Discord is the best place to find out.
Yep. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.